Capricorn, before you brace yourself, before that word in the title makes your stomach tighten the way it probably already has, I want to take the whole thing apart with you slowly, piece by piece, because I think you've been handed a fear you don't actually need to carry. There's a promise sitting in front of you. A call is coming, and it will be more than an apology, and it will land as something that startles you. Let's not swallow that whole. Let's open it up and look at what each part of it really means. Because when you understand what's underneath the words, the fear tends to dissolve and something steadier takes its place. Start with the smallest word, the one people skip right past, not as in not just an apology. That single word is doing an enormous amount of quiet work, and I want you to feel the weight of it. An apology is a contained thing. It has edges. Someone says the words, you receive them, and the transaction closes. But the moment you say something is more than that, you're describing something that spills past its container that won't fit in the tidy shape of a simple apology. What's coming towards you doesn't fit in that shape. It's bigger than the box people usually use for these moments. And that overflow is the first thing I want you to understand. When you find your way to Sarah Angel Tarot, it's usually because part of you is already listening for exactly this kind of overflow, the meaning that refuses to stay small. So if it isn't just an apology, then what is it? Let me dismantle the word apology itself, because it's become almost meaningless from overuse. A common apology is often about the person giving it. It's a way to relieve their own discomfort, to set down guilt, to be told they're forgiven so they can feel lighter. That kind of apology asks something of you. It asks for absolution. But what's approaching you is oriented the other way entirely. It isn't reaching for relief. It's reaching to give you something, to place a truth in your hands that you have every right to possess. And that difference in direction is everything. One kind of sorry takes, the other kind offers. What's coming is the offering kind. Now hold the medium of it for a moment, because this arrives as a call, and that detail is not incidental. In a world where almost everything difficult gets typed out and sent from a safe distance, the choice to use a voice is itself a message. Text is where people hide. You can edit a message a dozen times, strip the shake out of it, delete the sentence that reveals too much, present a version of yourself that's already been sanded smooth. A voice can't do that. A voice carries the tremor. It carries the pause where courage almost fails. It carries the breath before the hard part. Choosing to be heard rather than read is a decision to be undefended, and the person approaching you is choosing exactly that, whether they've consciously realized it or not. Let me take apart the word that's been making your pulse quicken, because I think it's been misunderstood since the moment you read it. Shocking. What is a shock really? Strip away the drama, and a shock is simply the arrival of something your mind wasn't braced for, something that exceeds the size of what you expected. It has nothing inherently to do with danger. A shock can be cold and it can be warm. The body reacts the same way to an unexpected gift as it does to an unexpected loss. That same jolt, that same catch of breath, and only a heartbeat later does the mind sort it into good or bad. So when the promise says shocking, don't let your fear finish the sentence for you. The jolt that's coming is the jolt of something larger than you let yourself hope for, arriving faster than you were ready to believe. Here is the first layer of what will surprise you, and it's a tender one, the specificity. You have probably spent a long time quietly assuming that the details slipped away for them, that the small things you shared dissolved into a general blur while you were the only one still holding them sharp. Prepare to be wrong about that in the most reassuring way. What you're going to hear is precision, references to things you were sure only mattered to you. A memory produced intact with details you'd forgotten you'd even mentioned. That precision is not something a person can fake in the moment. It only exists because they kept it, turned it over, held onto it in private. The specificity is the proof that you were never carrying this alone. The second surprise sits underneath the first, and it's structural rather than emotional. This person is breaking their own patterns simply by making the call at all. Think about who they've been. Consider the shape of how they usually handle things. The retreat, the going quiet, the letting distance do the work so they never have to say anything directly. That's their default, their well-worn groove. And a call shatters that groove completely. For someone whose entire strategy has been avoidance, picking up the phone is not a small step. It's a reversal of their nature. The medium alone tells you that something in them has genuinely shifted, because the old version of them would never have risked being this exposed. The call is the confession before a single word is spoken. What you won't see, but what I want you to understand, is everything that happened before the phone ever rang. A call like this is the visible tip of a great deal of invisible preparation. There were sentences spoken aloud to an empty room. There were moments the courage rose and then failed, and the phone was set back down. There was the choosing of a time, the waiting for the right window, the talking themselves into it and out of it more than once. By the time it actually reaches you, this call has already been made and unmade many times in private. What arrives is the version that finally survived all that hesitation, which means it comes to you already tested, already forged in someone's repeated attempts to be brave. There's a bravery in that dialing that I want you to notice, even as you keep every ounce of your own freedom intact. For a person who has always chosen the safer, quieter exit to voluntarily walk into a conversation where they can't control the outcome is a genuine act of courage. And you can acknowledge that courage without it costing you a thing. Recognizing that something was hard for them doesn't obligate you to reward it, doesn't require you to soften your own truth or hurry toward a particular ending. Two things can be true at once. What they did took real nerve, and you owe them nothing in return. Hold both. Generosity of perception and firmness of boundary can live comfortably side by side, and holding them together is a sign of exactly how whole you've become. Before they could confess anything to you, they had to confess something to themselves. And that inner reckoning was the harder one. They had to sit with the private admission that they were the one who let fear steer, who mistook distance for peace, who told themselves a comfortable story to avoid a costly truth. No one witnesses that inner confession. It happens alone, in the quiet, with no audience to perform for and no forgiveness on offer to make it easier. And it's the necessary first step. Because a person cannot hand you an honest truth they haven't first admitted to themselves. The call you receive is the outward echo of a much lonelier conversation they already had in the dark. And the fact that they survived that private one is why they can now reach the one with you. Let me follow the thread of what actually drove them to it. Because a reversal like this doesn't happen without a reckoning behind it. Somewhere in the quiet, they ran out of room. The story they'd been telling themselves, the one where they were fine, where the distance was mutual, where they'd made the sensible choice, stopped holding up. There's a particular kind of silence that eventually turns on the person keeping it, and theirs did. It stopped protecting them and started pressing on them. And when a person's own silence becomes heavier to carry than the risk of speaking, they finally speak. That's the reckoning behind the call. Not a whim, not boredom, the collapse of a story that could no longer support their weight. Something ordinary likely cracked the whole thing open, and I find that detail quietly beautiful. It's rarely a grand event that finally moves a person to reach out. More often, it's something small that slips past their defenses when they aren't braced for it. A place they turned a corner into without thinking. A phrase someone else said that landed too close. A stretch of quiet that let a feeling they'd been out running finally catch up with them. Whatever it was, it bypassed the guard. They kept posted and touched the thing underneath directly. And once that thing was touched, it would not settle back down. A dam rarely breaks at its strongest point. It breaks where the water finally finds a way through, and something unremarkable found the way through for them. Consider what had to be outweighed for this to happen, because it will help you understand the size of it. Pride is heavy. For a lot of people, pride is the single heaviest thing they own, the last thing they'll set down. It guards them. It lets them believe they were right, that they don't need anyone, that reaching out would be a defeat. For this person to make this call, Something had to grow heavier than their pride, and there are very few things in a human heart with that kind of weight. The realization of what they threw away is one of them. When the ache of a specific absence finally outweighs the comfort of being right, a proud person does the thing they swore they never would. That's the threshold they've crossed to get to this call. Now let's look at the actual content of what will be said, because I want to dismantle your expectation of it. You might be bracing for a stream of the word sorry, repeated until it loses meaning. That's not the core of it. The core is an admission of value, which is a very different animal. Sorry is about the past, about the wound, about the wrongdoing. But an admission of value is about the present and the future. It sounds less like I hurt you and more like I understand now what I had. It's the difference between someone apologizing for breaking something and someone finally recognizing that the thing they broke was priceless. The second is far rarer and far more powerful, and it's the one that's on its way to you. There's a texture to certainty in a voice that you're going to notice immediately, especially because you may have grown used to the opposite. If this person was ever evasive with you, ever non-committal, ever the one who kept things vague to keep their options open, then the thing that will genuinely startle you is how sure they sound this time. The hedging will be gone. The maybe this, maybe that will have burned away. In its place will be a clarity that you might have doubted they were even capable of. That shift from vagueness to certainty is one of the most telling changes a person can undergo, and hearing it directed at you, about you, is the kind of thing that rearranges what you thought you knew. These are exactly the quieter signals, the ones beneath all the noise, that a reading on Sarah Angel Tarot exists to help you hear clearly. Understand, too, that the person calling is not identical to the one who once went quiet. Time doesn't only work on you. It works on everyone, and it has been working on them. And the one reaching out now has had to become someone a little different in order to do it at all. More honest, more willing to risk looking foolish for the sake of saying a true thing. Less able to hide behind the strategies that used to keep them comfortable. You're not being asked to reconnect with the exact person who hurt you because that person, in some real sense, no longer entirely exists. The one on the line has been reshaped by the very absence they created. Whether that change is enough is yours alone to judge, but don't assume you're meeting the old version. You may be meeting someone who genuinely grew. Here's where I want to turn the whole idea of shock in a direction you might not expect. The biggest surprise in all of this may not be anything they say. It may be how it lands on you. You've perhaps imagined this moment arriving and pictured yourself undone by it, swept up, thrown off balance. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think the real shock is going to be your own steadiness. You're going to hear the thing you once desperately wanted to hear, and instead of falling apart, you're going to find yourself calm, grounded, almost serene, receiving it from a place of strength you didn't know you'd built. That composure will surprise you more than their words do. Let me speak to why you're more ready than you fear. Because I sense the worry that you'll be caught defenseless. You won't be the version of you that would have been ambushed by this call, that would have answered breathless and grateful for any scrap. That version has quietly been retired. In the time that passed, you did the slow work of becoming someone with your own center of gravity. So when the phone lights up, you're not going to be the person scrambling. You're going to be the person who can listen without losing yourself, who can feel the whole weight of the moment and still remain standing in it. The one who might be shaken by this call is not you. It's the one making it. There's a quiet power in the mechanics of a call that I want you to hold consciously. A call has to be answered. That means before a single word passes between you, there's a threshold that belongs entirely to you. To answer or not. To answer now or later. To let it come to you on your own terms rather than theirs. That threshold is a small sovereignty, and it's yours. I'm not telling you what to do with it, only reminding you that it exists and that it's yours to hold. The person on the other end is the one hoping, waiting, uncertain whether they'll be received. You are the one who decides. Notice how different that is from the position you may have felt you were in before. Picture the actual instant it begins, because I want you to meet it prepared rather than startled. The screen lights. A name or a number appears, and in that first half second, your whole body will react before your mind is caught up. That quick lift in the chest, that sudden sharpening of attention. I want you to know that this jolt is not a warning. It's only your system registering that something significant has arrived. Let it move through you. Take a single breath before you do anything at all. You don't have to answer on the first ring, or the second, or at all if you're not ready in that moment. The phone can wait for you far more easily than you've been made to feel you must rush toward it. Meet the moment on your own rhythm, and let that one breath carry you back to your center before you decide a single thing. Return with me to the idea of voice, because there's a layer of it I haven't opened yet. When someone speaks to you rather than writes, they hand you far more than their words. They hand you their tone, which can't lie the way text can. They hand you the speed of their speech, which quickens with nervousness and slows with weight. They hand you the places where their voice thins or catches. All of this is information, and none of it can be edited out in real time. So even before you weigh what they say, you'll be receiving a whole second conversation underneath it, the one their body is having without permission. And that underneath conversation is often the truest thing in the room. Listen, when the moment comes for the pauses, because the pauses will tell you a great deal. The silences a person leaves in the middle of a hard sentence are not empty. They're where the difficulty lives. A pause before a certain word is the sound of someone gathering themselves to say the thing that costs the most. If you hear those hesitations, don't read them as uncertainty about you. Read them as the opposite, as evidence that what they're saying matters enough to be hard. People rush through what they don't mean. They slow down and stumble through what they do. The unsteadiness will be your confirmation, not your warning. Consider why this truth insisted on arriving as a call rather than settling for something easier, because the choice reveals the intention. A message could have been sent quietly, deniably, from behind the safety of a screen. And if all this person wanted was to check a box or ease their conscience, that's the route they would have taken. But some truths refuse to be delivered from a safe distance. They demand the risk of being heard in real time, of not knowing how they'll be received, of being fully present for the response, whatever it is. Choosing the harder, more exposed channel is itself a statement about how much this matters. Easy truths get typed. The ones that count get spoken. Let me name the real headline of this whole thing. The shock beneath the shock. It's the scale of the feeling. For as long as you knew this person, you probably only ever saw a portion of what they felt, a carefully managed portion, the amount they were comfortable showing. What's coming is the rest of it, the part they kept behind the wall, and the size of it is going to surprise you because you had no way of measuring what you were never shown. People who guard their feelings don't feel less. Often they feel more and guard harder because of it. The flood you're about to encounter was always there. You're just finally going to see the true dimensions of it. Here's a turn I want you to sit with, because it flips the whole frame of the title. The most shocking thing in this exchange might be what you reveal, not what they do. When you meet their flood of feeling with calm instead of collapse, when you receive their certainty without rushing to match it, when you let them see that you have become whole and unhurried and entirely at peace, that will astonish them. They may be expecting to find you either broken or overjoyed, either of which would confirm the story that they still hold the center of your world. Finding you serene instead, kind but sovereign, is the plot twist they haven't prepared for. Your peace will be the thing that stuns the room. Let me pull one belief out into the light and take it apart too, because it may have been quietly running underneath everything. Somewhere along the way, you may have decided that if you had only been enough, they never would have gone quiet in the first place. Look at that idea directly and watch it come apart in your hands. Their silence was never a measurement of your worth. It was a measurement of their capacity in that season. And capacity and worth are entirely separate things. A person can fail to hold something precious not because it lacks value, but because their hands weren't ready for it. Your value was never the thing on trial. It held steady the whole time, whether they could perceive it or not, and the call arriving now is simply their perception finally catching up to a worth that was never actually in question. There's a specific kind of relief coming that I want to name. The relief of finally being believed by the one person whose disbelief once cost you the most. For a while, you may have carried your own account of what happened between you and quietly wondered whether you'd exaggerated it, softened it, or remembered it wrong, especially through a long silence that offered no confirmation either way. When they speak, that doubt gets answered from the outside. You'll hear your own experience confirmed in their words, the reality of what you shared spoken aloud by the very person who once made you question it. That's a quiet vindication, and you're allowed to let it land fully. You weren't imagining the depth of what passed between you. You were right about it all along, and now you get to hear it said. Think about what a call like this completes, regardless of anything that follows it. For a long stretch, you've been living with an unfinished sentence, a question with no period at the end of it, a door left ajar with nothing on the other side that you could see. That open state is exhausting in a way people rarely name. It keeps a small part of you perpetually turned toward a horizon, waiting. The call closes that. It finishes the sentence. Whatever you decide to do afterward, the simple fact of the loop being closed lets a part of you that has been standing guard finally sit down. That completion is a gift that arrives no matter what road you choose next. Let me talk about the choice that will sit in your hands afterward, because I want you to hold it lightly rather than let it press on you. Answering the call, hearing the truth, and letting it land does not obligate you to anything. Receiving is not the same as deciding. You can take in every word, feel it completely, believe its sincerity, and still take all the time in the world before you choose what comes next, if anything does. There's no clock on your response that anyone else gets to set. The confession is theirs to give. The choice of what to do with it is yours to make, unhurried, uncoerced, from your own center. Keep those two things separate in your mind, and you'll move through this with grace. Let me set the idea of forgiveness in its proper place, because the warmth of this moment invites it, and I don't want it to be misunderstood. Forgiveness is not a verdict you deliver on whether what happened was acceptable. It isn't a gate you're obligated to open, and it isn't a performance of pretending you weren't hurt. It's simpler and more private than any of that. Forgiveness is the moment you stop letting the injury run your life, and it's for you far more than for them. You can forgive completely and still choose distance. You can forgive and choose closeness. The forgiveness and the choice are two separate movements, and you hold both of them, and no call, however moving, gets to collapse them into one or hurry either along. Know in advance, too, that you're not required to fill the silences with reassurance. When someone pours out a truth, there's a strong pull to immediately soothe them, to say it's all right, to hand back comfort so the moment stops being uncomfortable. You don't owe that. You're allowed to receive what's said and simply let it sit. You're allowed to say you need time. You're allowed to offer nothing more than an honest acknowledgement that you heard them. The instinct to rescue the other person from the discomfort of their own vulnerability is a generous one, but it isn't a debt. Let the words they spoke stand in the open air without rushing to wrap them in your response. That restraint is not coldness, it's self-possession, and it belongs entirely to you. And if you do choose to let this person move any closer, know that you don't have to return the trust they once held as though nothing happened in between. Trust is not restored by a single moving call, however sincere it sounds. It's rebuilt slowly, through consistency shown over time, through small promises kept when no one is watching. There's no shame in asking for that gradual rebuilding rather than granting instant restoration. In truth, the willingness to let trust be re-earned at your own pace is one of the healthiest things you can carry into any second chapter. Watch, in whatever days might follow, whether they honor the pace your heart needs or push against it, How they treat your need for time will tell you nearly everything worth knowing. Notice how different this moment is from the ones you may have rehearsed in the harder stretches. Back when the silence was fresh, a call like this would have felt like rescue, like being pulled from water. Now it arrives as something cleaner, a meeting, rather than a rescue, because you're no longer drowning. You learned to stand in your own water a long time ago, so the call doesn't save you from anything. It simply meets you where you already stand, on solid ground you built yourself. And there is a quiet dignity in being met rather than saved, in receiving good news as an addition to a full life rather than a lifeline thrown to an empty one. I want to honor what the waiting taught you, because the call is going to prove that none of it was wasted. Every stretch of uncertainty you sat through was quietly forging the exact steadiness you're about to draw on. If you'd received this call while you were still raw, still reaching, you might have grabbed it and lost yourself in it. But the timing held until you were ready to meet it as an equal, and that wasn't cruelty, it was care. The version of you that answers this call is the version that can handle it well. And that version had to be built. And the building took the very time you thought was being taken from you. There's a thing about your intuition I want to underline here, because this call is going to confirm it. Some quiet part of you already sensed that it wasn't finished. In the moments when your mind insisted it was over and done, a deeper knowing kept gently disagreeing. And you probably talked yourself out of it more than once. When the call comes, let it teach you to trust that knowing next time without the argument. Your intuition has been running ahead of the evidence this whole time, and it's been right. The call is the evidence catching up to what you already felt. Let that recalibrate how much you doubt yourself going forward. I want to say something to the version of you that nearly gave up on this, because that version deserves tenderness rather than judgment. There were stretches, weren't there, when you decided the hoping was foolish, when you tried to force your heart to close the matter and move on for good? That version of you wasn't weak. They were trying to protect you from a disappointment they couldn't rule out. But even as they reached to shut the door, some stubborn ember refused to go fully cold. Some quiet part of you that couldn't quite accept that this was meant to end for good. That refusal, which felt at the time like a failure to let go, turns out to have been a form of knowing. The part of you that kept a small flame lit was in contact with something your reasoning mind couldn't yet see, and this call is the proof that the flame was worth keeping. Let me widen this out, because the shift underway reaches past this single relationship. When one long-held question in your life finally gets an answer, a strange thing happens to everything around it. Energy that was tied up in the not knowing gets released, and it flows into places you didn't expect. You may notice, after this call, that other stuck things in your life begin to loosen almost on their own, as though resolving this one held tension freed up a reserve you'd been unconsciously spending on it. A single knot coming untied relaxes the whole rope. Watch for that ripple in the days that follow, in rooms of your life that seem unrelated to this one. There's something you'll quietly carry away from this that has nothing to do with whether you rebuild anything, and it's worth naming on its own. You will have witnessed a person choose honesty over comfort, humility over pride, presence over the safety of distance. Watching someone actually do that, watching a guarded heart open in real time, is rarer than most people ever get to see, and it tends to leave a mark. It teaches you, at a level far deeper than argument, that people are capable of genuine change, that a story is never quite as finished as it appears, that the ones who go quiet are not always gone for good. You'll take that knowledge forward into every future connection, and it will make you a little more patient, a little more willing to believe in what a person can become. That lesson is yours to keep no matter what you decide about this particular call. I want to prepare you for the aftermath, the quiet that follows the call, because it has a particular quality worth naming. After a moment this charged, there's often a stillness, an almost anticlimactic calm, where the enormous thing has happened and now the world is simply going on. Don't mistake that quiet for nothing. It's the sound of something settling into place. It's a nervous system that's been braced for a long time, finally allowed to unclench. You might feel a strange spaciousness, A room in your chest that used to be occupied by the question and is now simply open. That openness is not emptiness. It's the space where new things get to grow. Let me be honest about the range of feelings the call might stir, because I want you to give yourself permission for all of them. You might feel joy, plain and bright, and you're allowed to feel it without second guessing whether you should. You might feel an old ache resurface alongside the relief, and that's allowed too, because the heart can hold gratitude and grief in the same breath. You might feel a startling calm, as though a part of you always knew this call was coming and is simply nodding at its arrival. Whatever rises, let it rise. Don't script your reaction to fit anyone's expectation, including your own. The honest response, whatever it turns out to be, is the right one. There's a form of respect I want you to extend to yourself in advance, which is to trust that you'll know. When you hear their voice, when you receive their certainty and their specifics and the tremor underneath, some clear part of you is going to register whether this is real, whether they've truly changed, whether what's being offered is solid. You don't need to figure that out ahead of time or brace with a strategy. Your discernment is sharper than your anxiety gives it credit for. In the moment, from your centered place, you'll be able to feel the truth of it, and you can let that felt sense guide you rather than any rule you tried to decide on beforehand. Let me return one more time to that word from the title and set it down gently in its proper place. Shocking. By now, I hope it's lost the sharp edge it had when you first read it. What's genuinely surprising here is not a threat and not a catastrophe. It's the scale of a feeling you were never shown, the reversal of a pattern you thought was permanent, the precision of a memory you assumed had faded, and above all, the steadiness you're going to discover in yourself when the moment finally lands. Those are the shocks. Every one of them is a good thing wearing the costume of surprise. Let the surprise in. There's nothing underneath it that you need to fear. As this reading settles toward its close, I want to leave you standing in your own strength rather than watching the phone. Because the truth at the center of all of this was never really about the call. It was about the fact that you became someone who could receive it well, hold your worth through the long quiet, and meet whatever arrives as a whole person rather than a waiting one. The call is coming, and it will be more than an apology, and it will surprise you in the gentlest possible ways. But you are the steady point at the center of it. Whatever you hear, you get to choose what happens next. From wholeness, in your own time, whenever the world gets loud again, and you need to find your way back to that center, you're always welcome here at Sarah Angel Tarot, where the quiet signals are taken seriously. Go softly now. Something honest is on its way to reach you, and you are more than ready to answer it.